Welcome back to the deep dive. We usually like to start these conversations with something a little lighter, a fun fact, maybe some tech news.
Something easy to digest.
Exactly. But today we are doing something very different. We're stepping away from the sunshine, away from the palm trees, and we're walking straight into the fog.
That's a good way to put it.
Because when we think of Hollywood, we all have this very specific, very curated image in our heads, don't we? The red carpet.
Oh, yeah. The flashing bulbs, the Vanity Fair parties, all the acceptance speeches where everyone cries and thanks their agent.
It's the dream factory.
That's the brand, exactly.
It's basically American royalty. But today's deep dive is about what happens when you turn off that spotlight, when you walk behind the set and you look at the actual machinery that makes that factory run.
Right.
We are digging into a massive stack of investigations, some articles, and a lot of dark theory deep dives that all fall under the umbrella of the dark side of Hollywood. And I have to be honest with you, right out of the gate, this is not about box office numbers. It's not about who's dating who.
No, it's much heavier. We are looking at a body of research that puts forward a pretty radical argument. The premise here is that Hollywood isn't just an entertainment industry.
It's more than that.
The sources claim it's a machine built on, believe it or not, ancient rituals, occult symbolism, and some incredibly strict and frankly terrifying control mechanisms.
It really feels like we're about to connect the dots on one of those giant conspiracy boards, with the red yarn going everywhere.
It's a perfect analogy.
We're talking about a shadow world that's supposedly operating right beneath the surface. And the sources we're pulling from today, they cover everything. I mean, from the statistical anomalies of the 27 Club to secret societies, alleged blood rituals, and the elite parties that enforce this kind of code of silence.
And I think it's crucial that we set the stage properly here for everyone listening. We're not just reporting on gossip. We are exploring what some call a grand narrative.
A grand narrative.
Yes. The sources we're citing, they present a worldview where these isolated tragedies, someone like Kurt Cobain or Amy Winehouse, they aren't seen as random accidents.
They're not just burnout.
Exactly. They're viewed as part of a much larger systemic pattern, a pattern that involves things like handlers and cleaners and even initiation. We're going to be talking about murder, mind control, occultism. It's heavy.
It is a dark theory. And look, I think for today, I'm going to have to play the skeptic because some of this stuff, it sounds like pure science. But our job is to unpack the argument. We look at the evidence presented in these investigations and we see if the logic, if it holds up. So where do we start? I think we have to start with one of the most famous coincidences in pop culture history.
The 27 Club.
The 27 Club. It's a term we all know. We just kind of toss it around casually now.
We do, yeah.
And I've always just thought of it as burnout. You get famous at 20, you suddenly have access to unlimited money, drugs, you party too hard. By the time you're 27, your body just gives out. It's tragic. It's tragic, but it feels explainable. It feels like the natural consequence of a rock and roll lifestyle.
On the surface, yes.
Yeah.
And that is the live fast, die young trope that we've all been sold.
Right.
But the investigation we're looking at here, it suggests that burnout is essentially a PR strategy. It's a cover story. And it's a cover story designed to stop you from looking at the forensics.
So to stop you from looking closer.
Exactly. Because when you actually pull the coroner's reports for some of these deaths, the whole burnout theory starts to physically fall apart. The source argues this isn't an anomaly at all. They call it a contract expiration.
Contract expiration.
Yeah.
Wow. That phrase.
Yeah.
It gave me absolute chills, Reddit. So, okay, let's look at the pattern. We have Brian Jones, the founder of the Rolling Stones.
He's the first domino. Found at the bottom of his swimming pool in July of '69. The official police ruling was misadventure.
Misadventure? What does that even mean?
It's a polite British way of saying accident. But here's the thing. He was a strong swimmer. And there were all these reports of construction workers who were at his house who had been harassing him, who were there that night. But the case was just closed. He was 27.
And then almost exactly 2 years later,
Less than a month after that, Janis Joplin.
Jim Morrison.
And then decades later, the pattern, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, all of them. 27.
And the source makes a really compelling point about the statistics here, right? I mean, musicians could die at 25 or 28 or 30. There's no magical reason for it. But the spike at exactly 27 it's statistically weird. It's an outlier.
It creates a pattern that feels almost, engineered. But let's move beyond just the numbers and look at the actual mechanics of it. The source calls them the impossible suicides.
Okay.
And it dives deep into Kurt Cobain's death. This is April 1994. Now, the official story we've all heard is a self-inflicted shotgun wound to the head.
Right. I mean, he was troubled. He left a note. He had a well-documented history of drug abuse. It fits the narrative.
It fits the narrative perfectly until you look at the toxicology report.
Yeah.
And this is where this deep dive gets incredibly specific. Cobain had heroin in his blood, a massive amount.
How massive are we talking?
The concentration was 1.52 milligrams per liter.
Okay, I'm not a doctor. Can you contextualize that for me? Is that a...
It's a staggering amount. To put it in perspective for you, for a severe long-term addict with a very high tolerance, a lethal dose is usually considered to be around 0.5 or maybe 0.6 milligrams per liter.
And he was at 1.5.
He was at triple that amount.
Yeah.
But the number itself isn't the smoking gun, the biology. At that concentration of heroin, you aren't just high. You're not just nodding off. You are clinically incapacitated.
Incapacitated, like comatose.
I mean, paralyzed.
Yeah.
The source argues that with 1.52 milligrams of heroin in your blood, the central nervous system shuts down almost instantly. The needle would likely still be in your arm when you hit the floor. But the official story, the one we're supposed to believe, requires us to accept that Cobain injected that massive dose, had the presence of mind to pull the needle out, put his works away neatly in a little cigar box, rolled down both of his sleeves.
Wait, he rolled down his sleeves?
He rolled down his sleeves, picked up a Remington Model 11 20-gauge shotgun, which is a heavy, long weapon, maneuvered the barrel into his mouth, and then successfully pull the trigger.
Okay, when you lay it out like that, the basic motor skills required for that sequence seem impossible.
It's not just unlikely. The sources say it's contradictory to how opiates affect the human nervous system. You physically cannot operate a firearm when your brain has shut down your body's motor function. And yet the official ruling was suicide. Case closed.
And that's just one example. You mentioned there are others. You see the same kind of physical impossibilities with Jimi Hendrix.
The Hendrix case it's even more disturbing, if you can believe it. The official story is that he choked on his own vomit after taking sleeping pills and drinking some wine.
Yeah.
Classic rock star accident.
The cliche.
But the source we're looking at cites the direct testimony of a Dr. John Bannis. He was the surgeon on duty who worked on him at the hospital in London.
This was the detail that really stuck with me from the reading. The doctor said Hendrix's lungs were completely full of red wine.
Not just a little bit. He said there were massive amounts of red wine in his stomach and, crucially, in his lung. He explicitly said, and this is a quote, the wine was washing up and down his windpipe.
My God.
But here's the catch. Here's the part that doesn't add up. Jimi Hendrix had very, very little alcohol in his bloodstream. His blood alcohol level was incredibly low.
Wait a second. If it's not in his blood, that means he didn't drink it. I mean, isn't that how it works?
That's exactly how it works. You absorb alcohol when you drink it. It enters the bloodstream through your stomach lining. If your lungs are full of wine but your blood isn't, that wine did not get there by him sipping a glass at dinner.
So it was put there.
Dr. Bannister himself described it as being similar to drowning. He compared it to waterboarding. It implies the wine was forced into his lungs rapidly, drowning him before his body even had a chance to metabolize it.
That's absolutely terrifying. That implies force. It implies he was held down.
It implies a silencing. And this brings us right to the motive. If we accept the premise, just for a moment, that these weren't accidents or suicide, why? Why do it? Why kill your golden goose? These people generate millions upon millions of dollars.
That's what I don't get. I would assume the industry would want them alive, keep touring, to keep making albums. That's where the money's.
And that's where you have to shift your thinking from artist to asset. The source introduces this concept of the artist as an asset versus a liability.
Okay.
When an artist is young, say 20 or 21, they are a pure asset. They're hungry, they're usually naive, and they will sign whatever contract is put in front of them. They do what they're told.
But then they get big, they get powerful.
Right. They hit that peak of influence, usually right around 27, and they start to understand the business. They start to see where the money's really going. They start to understand their own power.
And they start to push back.
Exactly. Look at Cobain. The sources say he wanted to divorce Courtney Love. He wanted to leave the industry entirely. He wanted out. He was becoming a problem. He was becoming a liability.
And Amy Winehouse, too. I didn't know this until I read these files, but the source says she was actually getting clean just before she died.
Yes, that's a key detail. She was moving towards sobriety. And maybe even more importantly, she was fighting to get the legal rights to her own music back. She was attempting to regain autonomy. And in this dark theory, an artist becomes worth more dead than alive the second they become unmanageable.
Because death freezes the brand.
Precise. You freeze the icon in their prime. They never get old. They never put out a bad experimental jazz album. And they certainly never speak out against the industry that owns their legacy.
So it creates a permanent revenue stream for the merchandise, licensing deals, biopic, all without the interference of the actual human being.
It's the ultimate form of control.
So the 27 Club isn't a tragedy, it's the exit clause. That is a bleak, bleak world. But the source doesn't just leave it there. It also presents a counter-narrative. What if you see the trap coming? What if you decide to beat them?
Now we get into the really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Now we enter the realm of the escape, and that means we have to talk about the Tupac.
This has got to be the ultimate he's still alive story. And, usually I just brush these off as wishful thinking from fans who can't let go.
I think most people do.
But the source for this deep dive, it leans really heavily into Tupac's known obsession with Niccolo
Machiavelli, the Italian Renaissance philosopher. He famously wrote The Prince, where he discussed, among other things, the strategy of faking one's own death to fool your enemies and gain the upper hand.
And Tupac was reading Machiavelli constantly while he was in prison. He was so into it, he even changed his stage name to Machiavelli for his final album.
And here's where it gets fun for the people who love puzzle. If you rearrange the letters of Machiavelli, you can loosely spell out, I am alive.
Or am alive K. It's a little bit of a stretch, but it's there.
It's a compelling little breadcrumb.
Mm-hmm.
But the source points to actual physical anomalies surrounding his death in 1996 that are, frankly, much harder to explain away. Take the cremation, for instance.
Yeah.
Tupac was reportedly cremated less than 24 hours after he was pronounced dead in Las Vegas.
That's almost unheard of for a murder investigation, isn't it? I mean, the body is the primary piece of evidence.
It's highly, highly irregular. In a high-profile homicide case like that, the body is evidence. You don't just destroy the primary evidence the very next morning. It makes you ask, why the rush? Why ensure there was no body to ever examine again?
And then there's the famous autopsy photo, or some people call it the hospital photo. The source claims that the prominent Machiavelli tattoo on his neck is completely missing in that photo.
It is a blurry photo, we have to admit that. But yes, the tattoo does appear to be absent. And then you have to look at the music itself. The man released more albums after he died than when he was alive.
It's true.
And he's constantly rapping about shell casing, faking death, and coming back like Jesus. It's almost like he was leaving a trail of clues for his fans to follow.
So the grand theory, posits that he didn't die. He retired to Cuba, possibly with his aunt Assata Shakur, who is living there in political asylum. That he did it to escape the FBI, to escape the industry handlers. He realized he was worth more to the system dead, so he gave them a death and took his real life.
It's presented as the only way to truly break the contract. You have to die. Whether you do it for real, like the 27 Club, or you just make it look like you did.
So you have the exit clause, you have the escape, and then you have the immortal. I mean, we have to talk about Keanu Reeves.
Chuckles. This is one of my favorite parts of the investigation. It's such a fascinating detour. The internet theory that Keanu Reeves is a glitch in time.
Look, I'm not saying I believe it, but the man does not age. I've seen the photos side by side. He looks the same now as he did in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Maybe he just has a great dermatologist. But the source takes it much, much further.
Oh, much further. The source compares him to various historical figures, specifically a French actor from the late 1800s named Paul Mounet.
I saw that picture. It's uncanny.
It's uncanny. If you look at the portrait of Mounet, the resemblance to Keanu is not just close, it's identical. And the kicker is, Mounet's body was never found after his supposed death. He just vanished.
And the argument isn't just that they look alike, it's that his behavior, Keanu's behavior, fits the profile of what you'd expect an immortal to act like.
Exactly. I mean, think about how Keanu acts. He is famously, almost bizarrely, detached from wealth. He gives away millions and millions of dollars from his movie checks to the special effects crews, to the stunt teams.
He rides the subway.
He sits on park benches and eats sandwiches with homeless people. He lives a relatively modest life for a megastar. The source argues this is the behavior of someone who has seen it all for centuries. He doesn't care about the temporary trappings of fame and fortune because he's a wanderer.
He exists inside the system, but he isn't owned by it. It's a fun thought, that Hollywood is just the current cover for some immortal being who is just passing through.
Great story.
But the source also mentions something a bit more sinister when it comes to replace this glitch phenomenon.
Yes, the MK Ultra glitches. And if you've been on TikTok or YouTube, you've probably seen the video circulating. You've got Al Roker on the Today Show just freezing on live TV, staring blankly for an uncomfortably long time.
I remember that.
Or the famous video of Katy Perry on stage where her eye seems to malfunction.
Her eyelid just kept drooping shut and she had to physically use her hand back open. It looked exactly like a robot malfunction.
The official explanation was, I think, an eyelash glue issue. Yeah. But the source frames these moments not as medical episodes or wardrobe malfunctions, but as literal cracks in the program, a momentary lapse in the mind.
And this leads to the idea of soft kill.
This brought us to Bob Marley. And like most people, I always just assumed he died of cancer.
He did, right.
He did. Specifically, acral lentiginous melanoma, which started in his big toe. But the source questions the origin of that specific cancer. It tells the story of a journalist who is often alleged to have been a CIA agent who visited Marley in Jamaica and gifted him a pair of boots.
A gift.
A gift. And the story goes that when Marley put the boots on,
he shouted in pain.
Exactly. He took the boot off and found a small piece of copper wire embedded in the toe, which had pricked him.
And that's the exact spot where the cancer...
The theory is that this was a biological assassination, a soft kill. You have to remember, Marley was a political revolutionary. He was uniting warring factions in Jamaica. He was a massive threat to the geopolitical order at the time.
And assassinating him with a bullet creates a martyr. It could start a civil war.
But giving him cancer via a poisoned wire, it silences him slowly. It looks natural. It looks like a tragedy, not an assassination.
It paints this picture of an industry, or maybe a power structure above the industry, that has a whole toolbox for every problem. If you're a liability, you're removed. Smart enough, you escape. And if you're lucky, maybe you're immortal. But who? Who built this machine? Who are the architects?
That's the foundational question, isn't it? Because the source argues this didn't just happen by accident. The dark side isn't some new infection. It's baked into the DNA of Hollywood. And it goes all the way back to three key figures: Aleister Crowley, Kenneth Anger, and Jack Parsons.
Okay, let's start with Crowley. The Beast 66. I know the name mostly from like heavy metal lore and Led Zeppelin.
Aleister Crowley was a British occultist in the early 20th century, very influential. He founded the religion of Thelema, and his core philosophy, his famous line was, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law."
Which basically means do whatever you want.
It's the ultimate pursuit of individual will and desire above all else. And the source claims this philosophy became the secret, unspoken religion of early Hollywood.
And you really do see his face everywhere once you look for it. The Beatles put him right on the cover of Steve Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club. Led Zeppelin was obsessed.
Oh, absolutely. Jimmy Page, their guitarist, actually bought Crowley's old house on the shores of Loch Ness. David Bowie was constantly referencing him in his music. Crowley made the occult fashion. He made magic, spelled with a K, acceptable and even desirable for the artistic.
And then there's Kenneth Anger. He was a filmmaker, right? An experimental one.
Yes, but he viewed the camera as something much more than a recording device. For him, the camera was a magic wand. And this is a really crucial concept in the source material, cinema as spellcast.
Okay, you have to unpack that. How is a movie a spell? That sounds out.
Well, think about the physical environment of a movie. You walk into a dark room. It's almost like a cave. You sit in silence. You willingly suspend your disbelief. You focus your entire attention, all of your mental energy, on a single flickering light on a screen.
Right. I mean, yeah, I zone out. I'm eating popcorn. I'm just completely absorbed in the story.
Exactly. Your critical thinking, your logical guard is down. Kenneth Anger believed that in this trance-like state, you could bypass the conscious mind entirely and implant symbol, or what the occult calls sigils, directly into the viewer's subconscious.
A sigil. Okay, stop there. Define that for us.
A sigil is basically an occult symbol. It's like a logo or a drawing that represents a specific intent or a desire like power or control or lust. The theory is that if your subconscious mind sees the sigil, the spell enters your mind without you even knowing. Anger believed he was casting spells on mass audiences through his film. And he was a mentor to the people who built modern Hollywood. He influenced Martin Scorsese. He was close friends with the Rolling Stones.
So the movie isn't just entertainment, it's a ritual. We are all participating in a ritual just by watching.
That is the core of the theory. And then you have Jack Parsons. This one always blows my mind because he's a legitimate, brilliant rocket scientist. He was one of the founders of the Jet Propulsion Lab, JPL.
The JPL, the NASA guys who send rovers to Mars.
Very same, a certified genius. But by night, Parsons was a devout follower of Crowley. He was performing these intense rituals called the Babylon Working out in the Mojave Desert, trying to summon entities.
That summon what?
Entities, spirits.
Yeah.
He wanted to tear a hole in the fabric between our world and another dimension. He wanted to bridge the spirit realm and what he called the dream factory of Hollywood. The source argues that these three men, Crowley, Anger, and Parsons, they laid the occult foundation for the entire industry. They believed that if you control the symbols the society sees, you control the society itself.
And speaking of controlling what society sees, we have to touch on Stanley Kubrick. The source has a massive section on him and the moon land.
This is one of the biggest and most enduring dark theories out there. The claim isn't necessarily that we didn't go to the moon, but that the footage we all saw on TV, that footage was filmed by Stanley Kubrick on a soundstage.
It's a trade-off. It was a deal.
Exactly. The theory goes that NASA needed the footage to be perfect. This was the height of the Cold War. They could not risk a camera malfunction or bad lighting or an astronaut tripping over a cable. They needed a cinematic mask.
And Kubrick had just made 2001, A Space Odyssey.
The most realistic space film ever made at that point. So the theory is they hired Kubrick. In exchange for his services, he got a blank check for his future film, unlimited creative freedom, and specifically, he got access to top-secret NASA-developed Zeiss lenses.
These are the lenses he used for Barry Lyndon, right?
The very same. If you've ever seen Barry Lyndon, you know there are entire scenes lit only by candlelight. That was physically impossible with standard film cameras at the time. You needed a lens with an aperture so wide it could capture an image in almost zero light. NASA had that technology for their spy satellite. Kubrick got it.
And the source says he basically confessed to this entire deal in The Shining.
Oh, the alleged clues in The Shining are legendary among conspiracy theorists. You have Danny the little boy wearing a very prominent Apollo 11 sweater. You have the hotel room number, which was room 217 in the original Stephen King book. It was changed to room 237 in the movie.
Because the moon is roughly 237,000 miles from Earth.
Exactly. And there's the famous scene where Jack Nicholson is typing, "All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy," over and over. The layout of the words on the page looks like the launch countdown sequence. The source frames The Shining not just as a horror movie, but as Kubrick's artistic confession. He was telling us in code that he helped stage the greatest production of all time.
It creates this idea that the most talented people, the geniuses, are the ones who get pulled into this web. It's not random, it's structure. Which brings us right to the hidden infrastructure, secret society.
You can't talk about the dark side of Hollywood without talking about the groups that supposedly run it from the shadow. And the source draws a direct line from the 18th century straight to today's Hollywood. It starts with the Hellfire.
That sounds ominous. The blueprint for elite debauchery.
That's what it was. Mock satanic rituals in caves, powerful politicians mixing with artists and poets. And the source explicitly connects this directly to Kubrick's other film, Eyes Wide Shut.
I was just going to say that.
That movie is seen by many in this field, not as fiction, but as a documentary. A very accurate depiction of these modern hellfire rituals. The masks, the anonymity, the high society setting, hiding these very dark primal impulses.
Then you have the Rosicrucians. They're described as the alchemists.
The long game players. The source suggests they use films to transmute the public mind, to change our consciousness over time. Think of movies like The Matrix or even something more recent like Midsommar. They aren't just entertainment. They're designed to make you question reality or to slowly accept certain occult themes and imagery.
And then you get to the really scary, the Cadaver Society and Skull and Bones.
This is what the source calls the necro pipeline, from Yale University straight to Hollywood and Washington, D.C. We know Skull and Bones is real. George W. Bush, John Kerry, they were all members. But the source describes the initiation rituals in detail, lying in coffins, confessing your deepest, darkest sexual secrets to the group.
Which is just a mechanism for creating.
Precisely. It's the kill switch. If everyone in power, everyone in the room, has confessed their darkest secrets while lying in a coffin, nobody can ever snitch. It creates a unified, unbreakable. And the source argues this obsession with death rituals is why our media is so saturated with it. If the people running the studios are obsessed with death, the movies they produce will reflect that.
And we can't ignore Scientology in this. The source has a very specific name for it, a celebrity panoply.
It's described as a parallel industry operating within Hollywood. They have their own studios, their own distribution network, but the real power, according to the source, is in the black file.
The auditing.
Yes. When a celebrity goes through auditing in Scientology, you hold these two metal cans and you confess everything. Your traumas, your sins, your fears, your secrets.
And those sessions are all recorded.
Allegedly, yes.
Yeah.
Every single one. So if a major star like Tom Cruise or John Travolta ever wanted to leave or speak out against the organization, the church would have hours and hours of tape of them confessing things that could absolutely ruin their careers. It's blackmail as a business model.
And finally on this list, the OTO. The Ordo Templi Orientis.
That's the direct continuation of Aleister Crowley's sex magic. The theory here is that those really shocking music videos you see, the ones filled with bizarre imagery, sexualized violence, demonic symbols, they aren't just for shock value.
They're rich.
They're described as Gnostic masses, public rituals designed to harvest the energy from the millions of people watching.
Energy harvesting. That's a term that keeps coming up again. But before we get to the harvest itself, we have to talk about how you get in. The initiation. The source details this really creepy story about the black envelope.
This is the stuff of Hollywood folk, the story of Grammy. The legend goes that at 2 a.m., a single black envelope appears under the hotel room door of a rising star. No return address, nothing.
And inside?
The instructions are simple. Dress in all white, say nothing. Surrender everything.
It sounds like a scene from Squid Game or something. You go to the secret location and the
blank slate ritual. The artist is symbolically stripped of their old identity. They're meant to become a vessel. And the source mentions a blood price, signing your name in a ledger in blood. It represents the total surrender of your autonomy. You are no longer John Smith from Ohio. You are now the entity, the brand.
And this leads to what the source calls the breakthrough trend. I found this pattern to be one of the most disturbing parts of the whole investment. The idea that a massive career spike is almost always preceded by a devastating personal loss, sacrifice.
The source lists some stark examples. Jennifer Hudson. Her career explodes. She wins the Oscar right after her mother, brother, and nephew are tragically murdered.
I remember that. It was horrific.
Kanye West, his mother, Donda, passes away during a cosmetic surgery procedure, and his entire persona shifts dramatically into the Yeezus character almost immediately after. Lady Gaga has spoken openly about losing her former self to a psychotic break right as her career was taken. The theory is that this immense trauma creates a vacuum in the psyche.
A void, and that vacuum is what the industry then fills.
Exactly. And this brings us directly to MKUltra, to mind control.
Now, we know for a fact MKUltra was a real CIA program. They admitted to it in the 70s during the Church Committee, but the source says it didn't stop, it just went private.
The source suggests the entertainment industry adopted and perfected these trauma-based mind control techniques to split the personality of their star. This is where the concept of alters comes in. You have the real person, and then you have the stage alter.
Like Sasha Fierce for Beyonce.
Or Slim Shady for Eminem, Roman Zelensky for Nicki Minaj.
We're just told these are fun stage names, creative characters to help them perform.
But the source argues they are much more than. They are distinct, separate personalities created through trauma to handle the pressures of fame and, more importantly, to perform the rituals that the real person, core personality, couldn't handle. The real person might have a conscience or fear or moral. The alter does not, and sometimes the programming glitch.
Like Britney Spears shaving her head in 2007.
That moment is iconic. The source frames that not as a mental breakdown, but as a breakout. She was desperately trying to strip away the persona. She was literally shaving off the asset, the blonde hair that made her so valuable. She was trying to make herself worthless to the machine so they would finally let her go.
Or when you see those videos of artists freezing on stage, their eyes rolling back in their heads.
The glitch in the matrix.
Yeah.
That's when the dissociation momentarily breaks and the core person is left standing there completely lost.
So, they initiate you, they program you, and then they harvest.
Okay, we have to talk about the most controversial part of this entire investigation.
Yeah.
And honestly, this is the point where I think a lot of people, myself included, usually check out. When people start talking about vampires and harvesting, it just sounds like bad science fiction.
I get that completely. It is the hardest pill to swallow in this entire dark theory. But the investigation argues that everything we've discussed so far, the money, the fame, the power, the control, all of that is just the appetizer.
And the main course is what?
The main course, according to these sources, is energy. And biologically, that leads us to the topic of adrenochrome.
Okay, walk us through this slowly. Scientifically, what is it? Because I've seen the memes and the wild claims, but is it even a real chemical?
It is a real chemical compound. Adrenochrome is produced in the human body by the oxidation of adrenaline. That's a scientific fact. The conspiracy, and I want to be very clear here, this is a theory that is heavily disputed and dismissed by mainstream science, is about how it's harvested and why. And the source compares it to the movie Monsters, Inc., right? Which I have to say sounds ridiculous.
It sounds absolutely ridiculous until you look at the why. The theory claims that when a human subject is in a state of absolute terror, pure, unadulterated fight-or-flight panic, their blood becomes saturated with this oxidized adrenaline. And the claim is that the elite then harvest this and use it as an incredibly potent psychoactive drug and an anti-aging agent.
So the whole scaring children to collect their energy thing in Monsters, Inc. isn't just a funny plot device in this worldview. It's a documentary.
That's the argument.
Yeah.
And while the word vampires sounds mythical, the investigation says you just need to look at the behavior that's happening in plain sight. We have spirit cooking with the performance artist Marina Abramović.
I remember this. This came out during the 2016 election email.
That's right. You have these elite dinner parties where the art involves writing recipes on the gallery walls with pig's blood. And these recipes call for things like fresh breast milk and sperm.
And the defense from the art world is always, oh, it's just avant-garde art. It's performance. You don't get it.
Exactly. It's just art. But the investigation asks a simple question. Why is the art of the elite always about consuming humans or human fluid? Why are there cakes shaped like life-size human bodies being cut into and eaten at these parties? Why do you have celebrities like Megan Fox and Machine Gun Kelly doing mainstream interviews where they casually admit to drinking each other's blood?
They did do that. I saw that interview. They said it was for ritual purposes.
And that is the point. The source, they are telling you it is a ritual. We are the ones who are trying to rationalize it away. It's just eddy marketing. The source argues that they are desensitizing us to it. They're showing us the menu and we're applauding them for their creativity.
And there's also the other kind of energy harvesting, right? Loosh.
Yes, less biological and more spiritual or metaphysical. The idea is that a Super Bowl halftime show or a massive stadium concert isn't just a performance. It's a mass ritual.
You have the singer on stage, and 50, 60, 100,000 people are all screaming, focusing their adoration on them.
And the artist acts as a light. All of that emotion, all of that adoration, all of that focused attention, it's energy. Loosh is a term from Gnostic texts for that raw spiritual energy. The theory is that the unseen entities behind the scenes, the architects, they feed on that energy. The audience is the battery. You leave the concert feeling exhausted, completely emptied out.
You're not just watching the show, you're being drained by it. That is a terrifying thought. So how do they enforce all of this? If you're a star and you see this happening, why don't you just run? Why doesn't somebody just call the police and blow the whistle?
Because, according to the sources, the police are often at the party. And this brings us to the final pillars of the system, the enforcement mechanism, the parties, and the blackmail.
We talked a little bit about the history Scotty Bowers, the gas station fixer back in the who would arrange illicit hookups for all the big stars.
He laid the groundwork for what was to come. But the source describes the Playboy Mansion in the 70s not as some sexual paradise, but as a factory of control. Quaaludes were famously used and referred to as thigh opener. It was a control system disguised as a party.
And today, the modern version is places like Sanctum,
a $75,000 a year membership sex club in Los Angeles. It was explicitly modeled by its founder after the party in Eyes Wide Shut. You wear masks, you sign strict NDAs. The source mentions the NH code they use.
Never happened.
It's the psychological contract. If you were at these parties, what happens there does not exist outside those walls. But the real currency, the real enforcement, is blackmail.
And this is where we have to talk about the freak-offs, Diddy, Jeffrey Epstein.
The source emphasizes that these events, these parties, are meticulously recorded. Hidden cameras everywhere. The goal is to get a rising star, someone with a wholesome image, maybe a Disney kid, to commit a crime or a taboo act on camera. Maybe it's hard drugs. Maybe it's something sexual and legal.
And once that tape exists,
they own you forever. You can never leave the cabal because the threat of that tape being released is always hanging over your head. It's the ultimate trap. And we saw it with the NXIVM cult, too.
Keith Raniere branding women with his initials.
Literally branding them like cattle. It's about ownership. It's not subtle.
And speaking of not being subtle, the source spends a lot of time talking about the symbolism in plain sight, the visual language they supposedly use.
And once you know what to look for, you cannot unsee it. The most common one is the one eye sign. You see it on magazine covers, a celebrity covering one of their eyes.
The Eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye.
Or the Eye of Providence. It's a symbol to signal submission to the hidden order. It's saying, I am one of them. I see with the eye of the elite. Then there are the black and white checkerboard floors in music videos and photo shoots.
Like in a Masonic lodge.
It represents duality, good and evil, light and dark, the mastery of both. And butterfly. You see butterflies everywhere.
Monarch butterflies.
Exactly. It's a direct symbol of Monarch program, a specific subset of the MK Ultra program. So if you see a pop star dressed as a butterfly or trapped in a birdcage in a music video, the source argues they are signaling to those in the know that they are a mind-controlled slave.
And finally, predictive program.
This is tied to what they call the law of choices. It's an old occult or spiritual rule. The hierarchy believes that to avoid karmic debt, they have to tell you what they're going to do before they do it. They need your implied consent.
So they put it in movies and TV shows.
Exactly, like showing the Twin Towers falling in The Simpsons or The Matrix years before 9/11 actually happened. The idea is, if they show you the tower falling in a cartoon and you watch it and you laugh and you do nothing, then in their minds, you have psychically agreed to the ritual. You are complicit.
It is overwhelming. It really is. We've gone all the way from the contract of the 27 Club to faked deaths, ancient occult rituals, trauma-based mind control, and now industrial-scale energy harvesting.
It's a lot to process, I know. But the source's main argument, the thread that ties all of this together, is that this isn't just about money or fame. It's a spiritual war. It's a battle for human frequency and, most importantly, human attention.
Which brings us to the final provocative thought. If the audience is the battery, if our attention is the very thing that is powering this entire
question becomes, are we complicit? The awakening that the source talks about isn't just knowing the facts or seeing the symbols. It's realizing that looking is a form of participation. By watching the rituals, by obsessing over the stars, by clicking the links, we are, in effect, feeding the machine.
That's a heavy thought to leave you with. Are we just fans, or are we the fuel?
The only advice the source gives is to look for the cracks in the narrative, because that's the only way to see what's really going on behind the curtain.
We'll see you in the next deep dive. Stay curious, everyone.